I mentioned earlier that Ken Schubenstein did double duty. It was on our first panel. Well, John McFarlane, who's also on the panel, is going to do a little double duty right now as well. What I didn't tell you about John, I told you that he was COO of Tutor Investments. What I did not tell you is I'm proud to say that he has an MBA from the Darden School. And in fact, And in fact, he's currently serving at as the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Darden School Foundation. So John has served the school in many different ways. And for this conference, the reason I want John to come up now is that he is heavily responsible for getting Alice Schroeder to come here tonight. So let's welcome John back up to introduce Alice.
Thank you, Ken. It's a great pleasure to be here. And before I introduce Alice to you, I'd like to thank both Carl and Bob and their respective staffs, Everett and David, and in particular Dan Anglin and John Griffin from the McIntyre School for putting this together. This really is what Darden McIntyre should be doing to enhance their brand and scope. And so this is a wonderful way to start, and I look forward to watching this grow. And in that vein, as Alice and I were walking into the theater this afternoon, we looked at it and said, you know, that looks a lot like the Orpheum Theater in Omaha. And for those of you who have been to the Berkshire Hathaway meetings, that is over 10 years ago, you know exactly what that is. And so we used to go to the meetings when shareholders could fit into that theater, which was probably about this size, maybe a little bit larger. Of course, that was before the B shares. And so we've been going back for years and watched it migrate to Ark Sabin and then ultimately the Quest Center. To Carl and Bob, I look forward to coming back to this conference in the future in JPJ Arena. So well done. Before I get to my comments about Alice, most of you guys probably know more than I'll say about her. That is, those of you who are under 30, because she has a Facebook fan page, which I can't view because my kids won't let me or my wife be on Facebook. So you guys already know more than I do about Alice, and I'll attempt to fill in for those of us who are over 30, 40, 50, 60. Rarely do practitioners have the opportunity to watch the undisputed master of their discipline in real time. We are truly fortunate to live in the age of Warren Buffett. As rare is to have the work of a master chronicled in exacting detail during their lifetime. Alice Schroeder accomplished just that with Snowball. In 838 pages, she provides unique insight into the individual who has largely shaped the field of value investing over the past 3 to 4 decades. And for that, Alice, we're deeply indebted to you for your work. Alice's career began in accounting, and while working for FASB, she drafted some of the most important accounting standards affecting the insurance industry. She subsequently moved on to investment banking and ultimately, as many of you know, to research at Morgan Stanley, where she became institutional investors' top-ranked property and casualty insurance industry analyst. It was in that capacity that she met Warren, and as a result of a strong mutual respect, he granted her full access to his papers, to his family and friends to write his biography. What makes Snowball so special, in my opinion, are in combination 4 distinguishing characteristics. First of all, Alice's very deep understanding of finance and the insurance industry. Secondly, the unprecedented access that she had to Warren and his work. Thirdly, her persistence and attention to detail. And fourthly, and most importantly, the integrity with which she undertook the task. Based upon our countless conversations over the past several years, I can assure you that she was relentless in her verification of fact. And for those of you who've read the book or at least flipped through it, the footnotes are certainly testimony to that. Not surprisingly, after a little more than a month on the shelves, Snowball is now ranked by Amazon as the #1 business publication or business book of 2008. So it's getting the recognition that's deserved. For those of you who have read it, you know why. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Alice Schroeder.
John, thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you all for having me here at the University of Virginia, and all of the people who were so welcoming. It's really terrific, but I especially want to say thank you to John because he was very modest in not playing up his role, but he was one of my important sources in writing The Snowball because of his role at Salomon Brothers as the treasurer. And I found one of the things that occurs when you write a biography is you do get a lot of conflicting information. And John was my sounding board. I would call him and say, these two people have said this and that, which one should I believe? And he would tell me, and I trusted him. So he was an invaluable resource and also gave me a lot of great facts and information. It's a real privilege to come before you tonight to talk about Warren Buffett, especially at this time of financial turmoil and crisis. As you all know, Warren Buffett is the only person of our time who's managed to accomplish his wish of becoming so rich that when he writes a check, it's the bank that bounces. These days, it doesn't take quite so large a check to make the bank bounce, but it's interesting to see that when it does happen, it's Warren Buffett that they run to cover the overdraft. He is really a singular figure in these times. And when I started working on The Snowball, of course, things were very different. The internet bubble had just imploded, and it was just after the aftermath of Enron, and I never anticipated anything like this occurring, but I knew what he was like, and of course, much of the importance of him is that his ideas and principles haven't really changed in 50 years. So I thought that writing a book about him would actually be a fairly simple matter. When you ask Warren a question, he always had the answer. When I would present him with a business problem, he always would have the solution. So the job was just to write it down. What I didn't realize was how quickly I would encounter something called Severide's law, which is that the cause of problems is solutions. So having asked all my questions, having listened to his stories, and having gotten all of his solutions, very quickly I was presented with a problem, which was that I had far more solutions, material, questions answered than I knew what to do with. And I began casting about for a way to construct a narrative to come up with how to put together a book about this man's life that would be meaningful and present a set of ideas. And I had a few attempts that failed, but I thought you might like to hear about them. So here's my first shot at it. The story began with a journey through the life of a 78-year-old man. It traveled back through the decades, tracing and uncovering a common truth that lies at the core of the most powerful investment philosophies, teachings, and models in the world. What you will learn today is the single, secret, underlying law of the snowball, a set of principles based on the most powerful law in the universe. All that Warren Buffett ever accomplished or attained in the business of life was done in full accordance with this most powerful law. Using this simple, universal law, the snowball offers the knowledge of how to create intentionally and effortlessly a joyful life. This is the secret to everything, the secret to unlimited happiness, love, health, and prosperity. This is the law of attraction, the secret of Warren Buffett. Okay, well, I passed on that idea. I thought it was not too good, but somebody else went there. So my next attempt, the snowball's action kicks off in modern-day New York, where a blood-stained copy of The Intelligent Investor is found symbolically laid at the foot of the New York Stock Exchange. The quest for the holy grail of investing led to a search that spanned the globe from London to Los Angeles, leaving a gruesome trail of interview subjects behind as evidence. The result was an exhaustively researched page-turner about a secret investing cult, cover-ups of ancient mistakes, and savage vengeance against those who tried to capture the holy grail for themselves. In the end, I found the grail guarded by an ancient 78-year-old heretic buried deep in a maze of files under a pyramid in Kiewit Plaza. I love that idea, but then there was this guy named Dan Brown who went ahead and used it before I got there. So I was sure, however, that somewhere hiding in Kiewit Plaza, there was a holy grail, because I spent 2,000 hours with Warren Buffett. I did get to go through all his files, and I got to ask him all of the questions and business problems that I wanted to. And I thought, you know, there had to be a holy grail, because I had heard from so many investors a little bit of irritation might not be the right word, but, you know, Warren always says that it's very simple. There's a few simple principles. And if he were only working with a smaller amount of money, he could earn 50% returns a year. Well, I've had a lot of people say to me, you know, I am working with a smaller amount of money. If it is really that simple, why am I not earning 50% returns a year? So the question is it just that Warren Buffett is a genius? Is it just that we're all dumb? Or is the truth somewhere in between? And I think the truth is somewhere in between. I was sure that hiding somewhere in his office was the Holy Grail. And in fact, while Warren is brilliant, and he is definitely different from everybody else, there is something more to it, because he does have a way of making the difficult look easy. And